Good evening. We are having our meeting virtually, and I have two of our board members are joining us virtually. That would be Cindy McMahon and Peggy Buchanan. They are on the screen as we speak. At this time, I would entertain a motion to open the agenda. Could I get a motion, please?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, to open the...
Come on, Mr. Bryant. To approve the agenda.
I have two items. That's why I was asking where you were going with that. I would request that the school nutrition bid extension request and the contract extension for one-to-one student device refresh that are in the consent agenda be moved to the action agenda. I have two quick questions on them. Won't take long, but if we could move those, I would appreciate that.
Okay, I have no... any member of the board object to that?
Yes.
Okay, so we're moving those items from the consent agenda to the action agenda.
Thank you.
And Ms. Matthews, you'll keep me straight on that, please. And with that, I would entertain the motion to approve the agenda with adjustments.
So moved.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Cindy. Could you just repeat again which two items are getting moved? I didn't catch what Pat was saying.
All right. Pat, would you do that, please?
So, Cindy, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
School nutrition bid extension request and contract extension for one-to-one student device refresh system-wide. Those two items.
Thank you.
So, are you approving this agenda, Cindy?
Sure. I don't know if there's a motion or a second,
Yes,
but I'm
I
happy
do
to
have a
offer
motion.
whichever one you don't have yet.
Okay. He tells me I have a motion. Could I get a second?
I'll be your second. This is Cindy.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, with that vote, I have to know that, Pat, you voted, thank you. And Amy Churchill, thank you. Max Queen?
Yes.
Donna Pate? Peggy Buchanan? Wave to me. Thank you. Cindy McMahon?
Aye.
Okay, and I. So we've got an agenda, and we're moving right along in this virtual condition. Now it's time for the superintendent's comments. Dr. Baldwin?
Well, I want to begin by thanking Mr. Huff and the Capital Outlay team. They just did a marvelous job of putting together not only the comprehensive manual, but doing the presentation. I think a very thorough presentation to our board. I want to thank Mr. Fairley for his work and Ms. Buckner's work in preparing that facility needs update and presentation that again came to the board this afternoon. And a big thanks to Mrs. Frisbee for her efforts in putting together the presentation for our operating budget. That is a process that as superintendent I'm extremely proud of, and I said this earlier, that it's a tremendous model, I think, for the entire state in terms of collaborative information being shared and provided, and the work that takes place to make sure each and every voice that comes from the school is heard and researched in terms of their requests. So again, thanks to all that were involved in all three of those processes. I also want to recognize our nationally board certified teachers. I think our board's aware that in previous times prior to COVID-19, that was a face-to-face recognition, and we had a nice dinner prepared early, so we celebrated unofficially and then came in and did it officially in front of the board. But I think each and every board member has been provided a link by our communications department. We have a outstanding virtual recognition that if you follow that link, and I would encourage the public, that is also on our district website. We're just so very proud of each and every one of those teachers. A portion of them are newly nationally board certified in combination with those that are renewing that incredible recognition. And it's a very difficult program. Well, I always hear just as many thanks coming to the spouses of those teachers as I do the teachers themselves, because again, it is a very challenging process, time consuming, and we're just extremely proud of each and every one of them. So we're sorry we can't do it in person, but the next best thing is one of those outstanding videos coming from our communications department. I want to tell you, as superintendent, I cannot imagine any person in my role across this state that can be any prouder of the staff in Buncombe County Schools and what their efforts and their dedication, their services since March 16th when we closed due to COVID-19. Since March 16th, 576,546 meals, breakfast and lunch meals that have been served to our kids through our child nutrition department, supported by so many of our assistants, bus drivers, our certified staff, our district staff up here, just have to be so proud of that. And I stated this earlier, but to me, the most miraculous thing was the day that we closed, that Monday, through Ms. Payne's leadership, we were providing these meals that day one, and we haven't stopped since. So thank you, thank you, thank you, so proud. And our Family Resource Center, which is brand new, it was invented through the work of one of our outstanding social workers and leaders, Shannon Boyd. And since the 16th, they have provided 306 contacts to students and their families, and these families and our students are in the category of the highest needs for support. And on a daily basis, they send food, they send health and hygiene supplies, you name it. And I can't think, if you want to really have a feel-good story, walk to the back of our Nesbitt Discovery cafeteria and look how full every single table is of all of these items that the community continues to bring in. Can't say enough about our church organizations. They have just been incredible about providing support to this effort. Again, 306 families throughout this period of time. Very, very proud of them. Also extremely proud of our curriculum and instructional technology staff, because when we went home, and board, I know you well enough, the first mission that you told me had to be put in place is we could not lose an employee. We wanted to keep our employees whole. So creative thought, we put some of them to work providing these services, but others, we will have the best trained staff when we open on August 17th, because we have already completed as a staff 8,674 professional development courses. So they are working hard, they are training, they are becoming better. Thanks to all the efforts with Suzanne, with Jennifer Reed and the staff down there. And then finally, virtual instruction. You know, this was truly our first go, and it's not like we could start out small. As soon as those laptops went out there, we were providing instruction across all grade levels. That was a massive, massive endeavor. Barry Pace, Robert Frisbee, our staff up here in technology, the preparation, the planning, the professional development they've provided to our teachers and staff prior to this, that set the foundation. And how can you say enough to each and every one of our classroom teachers that in their homes opened up that computer and provided incredible quality instruction. The creativity that was shown, parents continue to stop and say, Boy, I'm so proud of our teacher. We have the best teacher, and the instruction and reaching out through the internet, cyberspace, to continue to make those connections. Nothing takes the place of the face-to-face contact with our teachers and students. But my gosh, we came close, and we continue to come close. So it continues on through June the 3rd. But again, I just can't say, I don't have the words to say how proud I am of each and every category of our staff out in Buncombe County Schools, because it's been miraculous how successful you have been in continuing to connect and support our kids. This past Saturday, our General Assembly passed a COVID-19 relief package. It has now been signed into law by Governor Cooper. The package is composed of two primary bills. It's House Bill 1043, Senate Bill 704. The House bill reflects funding, while the Senate bill is made up of policy revisions and additions. While funding reflects state and local dollars, the majority of funds come from the Federal CARES Act, and it specifically targets child nutrition, exceptional children's services, social mental health support for students, laptops and hotspots for students and staff, routers for school buses to enhance remote instruction, summer learning sessions or jump starts for designated students in kindergarten through 4th grade. Ms. Swanger and her team's already started planning on that program for the summer. And literacy interventions for elementary school students this fall. And I think those are focused on grades 2 and 3, I believe.
Yes.
Is that correct? Second and third?
Well, first, second, and third.
First, second, and third. For the current school year, virtual days will officially count to meet our calendar requirements. That was very welcome news. End of grade and end of course testing, high school work keys, CPR graduation requirements, K-3 reading assessments, and student attendance requirements have all been waived. Also, there will be no school performance grades that will be assigned for this school year 2019-20. For the 2020-2021 school year, up ahead, the start date for all LEAs is now August 17th. Now, because Buncombe County Schools had inclement weather waiver, we had already set our schedule to start August 17th. But for the majority of systems, they will be starting early. It is also noted that no virtual instruction can take place from August 17th through August 24th. So based upon this piece of legislation, what that at least tells me is on August 17th, our doors are going to be open. What it looks like inside, what our staff, what our students look like, we don't know yet, but those doors will be open. K-3 class size reductions are still scheduled to be implemented. We believe that that is going to be debated in the summer months. There's still a possibility that that particular implementation will be waived, but as far as planning purposes, we're moving as if it will actually be enforced and integrated in K-3 for the 2021 school year. Prior to the 10th day that our school buildings are open, all 4th graders will be given a reading assessment. That is now a mandate. Within the and that has to be prior to the 10th day that the school buildings are open. I want to emphasize that what's coming to you is a revised calendar, because that will now be required. Our 2021 calendar will now reflect 190 days of student instruction. 5, we call them virtual, the state calls them remote, instructional days must be included in 185 of those 190 days. Similar to recent past years, the 185-day segment of the calendar can still be satisfied with up to a minimum of 1,025 hours of instruction. An additional 5 days of student instruction, which cannot be virtually provided, must also be designated within our revised calendar. So I know I've confused everyone, but as I said earlier, we have a plan and we're going to be working on this, and we'll be bringing that revised calendar to you with plenty of clarification and explanation.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay, so for the 5 days that we have to do virtual instruction, could that possibly be if we're out of school for inclement weather?
Because we have a waiver, we have up to 5 days of inclement weather that we can provide virtual, and they will be counted as part of the 185 days or the 1,025 hours.
Okay.
So that is a true advantage for us, because again, in years past, if we had offered the virtual instruction, there was no guarantee that they would be counted as full instructional days. But that does not equate to the 5 days that the state's requiring for us to provide. Now, what we have found out, which makes it even more complex and confusing, is that those particular 5 virtual days, now required by the state for everyone, can be subsequently, that's not the correct word to use, they can align with a teacher work day that particular day, as long as virtual instruction is provided to the students to have at home with their computer. That is as clear as mud, Ms. Pate. But that's part of what we'll bring clarification to you from a preliminary standpoint. Looking at this, we think even though it sounds confusing, that it will work. And the advantage, and I appreciate you asking that question, because the advantage we have as a system with the waiver and the ability to use virtual days is a true advantage for us as well to make this calendar work.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one. I want to make sure I understand. So we are spending somewhere between 50 to 60 days virtually teaching our kids this year, and the state wants us to add 5 days in next year, somewhere during the school year. For what reason?
That is not in the legislation. So I do
So
not have an
there's
answer.
no explanation or any rationale behind it that's been put out. It's just out there. I mean, I could get it if we hadn't done that this year and they're looking at, okay, we may have to do this, so let's build some days in first month of the school year or first 2 months or something, but that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Mr. Shatley?
So the legislation, and Dr. Baldwin's right, it does not indicate the purpose of those 5 days, those 5 remote learning days. What the legislation does say, though, is that we cannot use those 5 days the first week of school.
Right.
And then it also indicates that Dr. Baldwin says we can use them on teacher work days. The intent may have been trying to find some additional services for students for missing so much this time without having to extend the normal school calendar beyond the 215 total days, counting all the holidays, because that's what we typically contract with teachers. And then finally, the legislation requires all districts in the state to develop and implement a rather extensive remote learning plan.
And that's supposed to be in place by, did I read June 30th? Did I read that right?
No, due in July.
Why, I think,
Okay.
too, though.
Okay.
And that's something that will come before this board.
Right.
And you all will have to approve, and then we'll send it to the state board. So there is that too, to balance. My point is, it may have also been as a way to certainly prepare if this occurs again, but to also see how we implement that new plan as kind of practice as well. But that is my speculation.
Yeah, I think it works probably easier at the middle and high school level, but we're not currently, I don't think, sending those devices home. Prior to COVID-19, we weren't sending those things home on a daily basis in elementary schools, right?
No.
So yeah, you're going to pick 5 days in a row or 3 here and 2 there, and the logistics of that are just.
It doesn't have to be devices, it can be materials and packets.
Madam Chair, can I ask another question about this?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Cindy, go ahead.
This is Cindy McMahon, and if we're going from 180 days to 190 days, and we are therefore presumably paying teachers for 10 more days than we would have, is there funding to go along with that?
Go ahead.
I'll let Dr. Baldwin answer the funding question, but the 215-day total days in the calendar remains the same. So we still have to have a 215-day calendar, and again, that counts all your teacher work days, all your holidays and annual leave days as well.
That's the contract that a teacher signs.
Correct.
For a 215-day pay period. And you're exactly where I am. How does this compute?
We're losing 10 days
The math
of
doesn't
either
work.
holidays or teacher work days or something, is that correct?
Ultimately not. I mean, there are a lot of variables that you can put into the calendar equation here to make it work out to 215. It may be very well to remember, or very easy to not really do anything but add 5 virtual remote days onto teacher work days. And because if you remember what Dr. Baldwin said, we have 185 day or 1,025 hour requirement. And so the 190 days, we can still meet the 190 days by meeting the 1,025 hour requirement and then just adding on the 5 additional in-person days. However, we meet that 1,025 hour requirement usually somewhere around day 168, 170, 171. It depends on how many half days, we have, early release days. And so technically all you have to do is meet your 1,025 hour requirement and then add 5 days, in-person days, not the 5 remote days. And you can do that with you can do that by just having the same amount of days as you normally have, because you guys have traditionally gone 180 days, because that's been the mark that you've always wanted to hit for parents in the community, although you well exceed your 1,025 hour requirement. And so the easiest thing may be to do is just to simply say, here's our 1,025 hours plus our 5 in-person days as prescribed by the legislation. Now, where do we stick these remote learning days? Do we put them on a teacher work day, or do we try to squeeze them in some other fashion? And there are some options, but that's kind of how we've read the legislation this week and the guidance that we're going to be sending out too. But there's some work to be done.
And I think.
So if it is a teacher work day and a remote learning day at the same time, how is that teacher getting any planning time if they're also teaching their kids at the same time?
It doesn't require the current model we're using is the teacher in front of the computer leading the instruction, physically leading the instruction per their computer. But one thing that we've already talked about is a possibility of pre-programming a video session led by the teacher that the student, as long as a student is provided the material, it would still allow that teacher to do professional development, or it also allows that teacher to take, on an optional workday, take leave. So it can be done. Again, this is a very different model than we've seen before, But I think Mr. Shatley's exactly right. Back to your initial question, the key to it is the provision that allows 1,025 hours to meet the requirement of the 185 days. And probably oversimplifying this, it's 1,025 hours of instruction plus the 5 additional face-to-face days plus the 5 combination virtual teacher work days. And you've met the requirements of the calendar. Now that's oversimplifying it. And as Mr. Shatley said, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of planning. Mr. Bryant's exactly right. We're now moving into an area, we've not sent computers home in preparation for inclement weather days. But now we're going to have to talk through, how do we do that? How do we make sure it's available? Because the advantage we have with the waiver is that up to 5 of those snow days, if we can provide virtual instruction, those days will now count toward the 1,025 hours that we need to meet the 185 out of 190 days. Have I completely confused you now, Ms. McMahon?
But if we do that, then those days don't have the ability to count if we had other snow days towards a potential waiver the following year. Is that correct?
I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah.
Because we still would be out of school. We still would have canceled school, but we'll have to wait to see if any more comes from the legislature. I think as of today, if next year Dr. Baldwin calls school off because of 2 days off of school because of a bad snowstorm, and we decide on the second day to do a virtual learning day, I still think that counts as a day
Being
off,
a day out.
an inclement weather day in regards to the formula for a potential waiver in the future. But that could change.
There was one other calendar provision I want to make you aware of, and I think that there was a clear purpose for this being put in the legislation. If we are closed over 5 days in 2021 based on a resurgence of the coronavirus, we will be able to receive calendar credit when we operate as virtual days. But in order for that to kick in, we must be closed over 5 days due to the coronavirus. So I think the rationale for that, Mr. Shatley, is we don't have to go back and wonder whether or not that we will be given credit. It's already in the legislation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the board about this muddy situation that we are in?
Just one other clarifying question. So we are required to do 5 virtual days. Are we allowed to do more than 5 virtual days for weather or other reasons? Or can we only do more than 5 in the case of an extended COVID closure?
I think we have up to 5 virtual days that can be used to make up inclement weather days. We don't have any allowance beyond that. If there are beyond the 5 days, it would have to be related to, again, a resurgence of the coronavirus.
Cindy?
That answers it for me. Thank you.
Peggy, do you have questions? Have we lost Peggy? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else in the room have questions for these knowledgeable people? All right, then continue, Dr.
Okay.
Baldwin.
At this time, I'm going to ask Ms. Swanger to provide you some information regarding the grading policies, and these grading policies are immediately relevant to the current school year. And I'm also going to ask her if she'll talk to you about our high school graduation ceremony plans. That is certainly receiving a lot of attention, as it should. Very important milestone for our senior class of 2020. Then we'll be asking for some endorsement of these plans.
Thank you, Dr. Baldwin. Madam Chair, board members, the State Board of Education approved a grading and student promotion policy on April 23rd. State leaders believe it is important that grading policies positively impact as many students as possible, validate the efforts of remote learning for students and families, and address issues of inequity and excellence. It is the intention of the policy to ensure that no student receives a failing grade due to COVID, and that student grades as of March 13th serve as the level of standard of grading, and that students are held harmless. So for kindergarten through 5th grade, no final grades. The important thing about that decision is that teachers will provide feedback to families on student progress as of the beginning of the year to March 13th and also after. And that information will also include academic and social emotional information that will go to next year's teacher for transition purposes. Middle schools are similar. Teachers will also provide feedback and to families and then feedback to next year's teacher, but in addition, there are 2 new codes. One is pass COVID-19, one is withdrawal COVID-19. The pass, again, what were the students' grades on March 13th? And did the students improve over remote learning? Then that would be a pass. If that student did not improve or was not able to participate, then that student would be given a W, a withdrawal. And it's very important to note that the State Board did not mean that a withdrawal was a failing grade. It meant that students did not master the content. Either they were not able to continue or they had not been mastering and did not make progress during remote learning. So again, not a failure, not a retention, but something that will be useful for next year's teachers, because we're worried about the gaps that students have and may bring to next school year. 9th through 11th graders is very different because our students have a choice as to how their grade looks on their transcript. And they will make this choice in conjunction with staff at the school level and with their families. They have 3 options. Option number 1, a student can take a numerical and have a numerical average placed on their transcript. That will count in their GPA. Again, what was happening on March 13th, which coincidentally was the end of our third 9 weeks, so it was in a very nice, neat package. So what was happening March 13th, they can take that grade, or they can try to improve that grade. They can't go lower than that grade on March 13th, but they can go higher with remote learning. Students will be given credit, and it will count in GPA. Well, the students have the same option to take as middle schoolers. They can take the past COVID-19 and say that's what I choose to do, or a withdrawal if they were not being successful and did not make successful progress during remote learning. And those do not impact the GPA at all. Any questions so far about those? Seniors were looked at very early. That was our first, and I think I mentioned last board meeting, we had 11% of our seniors that were not passing as of March 13th. And so remediation plans went into place quickly, and those students are reporting doing well if they're continuing with remote learning, so that we hope to get those students graduated. That was the most important part. But students, as seniors, they can take the pass, or they have the pass code, COVID-19 code, as of what they were doing on March 13th. The big thing for seniors was to engage them and get them to continue remote learning, because they pretty much knew as of March 13th, I am here, or I need to work a little harder to get through graduation. We've really tried to place an emphasis, and we've probably said it way too many times at each principal meeting weekly. It's about students' growth. It's about giving feedback to students on their performance. It's about time to master a standard if they're not mastering a standard. Grades are important, but grades can be subjective, and we certainly want to err on the side of the student. And for most teachers, that is the accommodation that we all believe in. For some teachers, it's a challenge, and we've had to work through what is reasonable and how do we err on the side of students during this time period. So any question about grading?
I just have a comment. I am very hopeful that maybe this is the beginning of some pretty good things to come in the future as far as having the opportunity, because I'm excited to hear that, teachers will be doing, written assessments that are going to go to that next teacher, and she'll have that feedback versus a grade on an end of grade test that, doesn't really show anything. So, I equate that to the medical world of, we report off on our patients, and that's just so much better than me throwing a lab value at my coworker, and that's all I give them. So that is one thing I'm very excited to hear about.
We are
hope that
too,
they'll
actually.
continue.
We're providing a template because it was also important that we have consistency, and because we all know that one teacher would write 2 words and another teacher would write 2 pages. So we do have to make sure that our families are getting the information. And I do like what our schools have helped us with feedback, so that will be a good change.
Yeah.
On to graduation. Celebrating our senior class of 2020 is very important to us, and of course, we were talking about it long before school closures. But since then, we have gone into high gear. We've had at least 6 meetings with principals, assistant principals, district leaders, board representation, and our charge was to create a consistent graduation ceremony that honors students, families, and our school communities, while still following the COVID guidelines provided to us during this unprecedented health crisis. Mr. Campbell also attended one of our meetings. We've enlisted the assistance of the Buncombe County Emergency Operations Center, as well as our state resources, of which you have a copy in your folder. All 10 principals agree and support this recommendation, which includes honoring graduates during the scheduled graduation weekend and at a future event. Principals have asked for feedback from their advisory council members, and so our recommendation is such. All schools will have a virtual graduation ceremony that includes features of past ceremonies such as student speeches, music, recognition, student names, achievements, and the most important, the declaration of graduation. It is vital that students are allowed to be declared graduates on graduation weekend in order for them to move forward with their post-secondary plans. Following the virtual graduation ceremony, students and families are invited to attend a drive-through event on their school campus. There will be a staged area to include receiving the diploma safely following health guidelines and a photo opportunity of students in caps and gowns. We are asking that 1 vehicle per family to include the graduate to go through this processional. And in addition, a school-based reunion type of activity for the class of 2020 will be planned and scheduled by the school principal, the advisory council members, and the school improvement team of those schools. The time will be determined later, but it will be during the 2021 school year in accordance with COVID protocols at the time. We feel this recommendation honors the dignity of the graduation ceremony and still provides for students and families to be on their high school campus, receive a diploma, and take that important cap and gown photograph, because this is a very brave and resilient senior class, and we want to wish them well on their next steps. So that is the recommendation or the endorsement that I'm bringing to you this evening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, you've heard the report of the work that's been done by our administrative staff as well as by our high school principals, and I'm interested if any board member has a question as of this point.
Madam Chair, this is Cindy again. This morning I attended the advisory council meeting for Reynolds High School.
You're fading in and out, Cindy. Auditorially. We
No.
can't hear you.
No, here.
No, we cannot.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I accidentally muted myself. Okay, so this morning I attended the advisory council meeting for Reynolds High School, which by and large synced up completely with what we just heard from Ms. Swanger. And the only difference I would say there was that the members of the advisory council, one of whom is a senior parent, and then other parents who are in touch with senior parents as well, there was a strong feeling that we should be able to have at least 2 cars from each family so that grandparents could come and take pictures or whatever. So that 1 car limitation, is that hard and fast as a recommendation, or where do we stand on that?
I would think that that's a detail that we will work with the logistics, because we need to think about the flow of traffic on the campus. We're not tied to that. This is just that's a good point. We'll have to have some more conversation with all of our principals.
And maybe our EOC as well.
And EOC.
Yeah.
That would be very
Thanks.
important.
Right.
And we know that we want to give schools some flexibility as to the time of day and what their campus drive-through event looks like. What we're saying is virtual graduation ceremony is consistent, and there is a drive-through event that day or within that period of weekend.
Okay? That answer your question, Cindy?
Yes, thank you.
Other board members, questions?
I guess the school reunion that you're saying the individual schools would be working on during the school year, what about, is there any way, and again, I guess it just depends on when they lift the restrictions, but, very late before these kids go off to their other adventures? Because I just worry that if it's something that's planned in, say, like October, when a lot of reunions are planned, that you just may not get a lot of participation because these kids could be scattered by then.
And again, following the protocols of the governor's orders that we'll be under dictate that, and EOC input as well. Some of the principals are talking about a reunion. It could be before they go to school. It could be after. It could be a homecoming weekend. It could be in the winter at a basketball event, or, really they have the ability to choose once we know when a safe point in time to congregate that many students.
Because I was thinking, you said the 2021 school year, but, and I guess maybe technically this still would be, but even trying to coordinate something with the graduation for next year, having something where they would also they would still have their own thing, but
Yep.
maybe even if it had to be a year later, having that opportunity.
I think the important part is that students have a ceremony to receive their diploma, and then honoring them in some kind of celebration or reunion. And that's great advice for the advisory council in those districts to think about how they want to do that. I think it's also important that we recognize we'll have an upcoming senior class in the year 2021, so balancing
Right.
all
that's
of
what I was
that.
saying. Lots of things to consider.
I'd like to commend our staff and particularly our high school principals having been able to attend these meetings. The level of commitment at the high school level to provide for our students a significant recognition is very, very evident in their conversation. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you folks have done to
Reach consensus.
thank you, to reach consensus with those high school principals, because it's all over the place. I want to thank you for that. Are there other comments or questions from the board? Well, hearing none, thank you, Ms. Swanger. Are you finished? Okay. Dr. Baldwin is finished. So now we move on the agenda At this time, I understand we have no public comment, but I would like to announce that Ms. Judy Lewis has been selected to be the representative to our AB Tech Board of Trustees. She will represent us. I believe she'll be sworn in August, July or August, and she will take that seat representing Buncombe County Schools at that time. We are very fortunate to have this caliber of representation on our AB Tech Board of Trustees. And now we'll move to the action agenda. And the first item on the agenda is the 2019-2020 Budget Amendment Number 6, and that's Ms. Frisbee. Are there questions from the board for Ms. Frisbee on this item?
No.
No.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to approve. And I have to, according to my attorney, I have to do it this way. Oh, okay. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second was Ms. Churchill. And so now we're going to vote, and I'm going to call your name, and you will vote yay or nay. Mr. Bryant just did a yay. Thank you. Ms. Churchill?
Yes.
Yay. Mr. Queen?
Yay.
Yay. Ms. Pate?
Yay.
Yay. Peggy Buchanan?
Yay.
Thank you. Cindy McMahon?
Aye.
Ann Franklin? Yay. Always somebody. So that passes, right? God, this is so artificial. Approval of, the next item, approval of funding request for current expense and capital appropriation and submission of the 2020-2021 preliminary budget to the county commissioners. That again is Ms. Frisbee. I need a motion. Are there questions from the board? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
This is Donna Pate, and I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Pate. Could I get a second?
This is Cindy McMahon, and I second.
Okay, I've got 2 seconds. That's great. Now then, we need to vote. Mr. Bryant, yay. Ms. Churchill,
Yay.
Mr. Queen,
Yay.
Donna Pate,
Aye.
Peggy Buchanan,
Aye.
Cindy McMahon,
I'm a trendsetter, aye.
Ann Franklin, aye. All right, so that passes, right? Okay. Cane Creek Middle School, use of capital outlay athletic allotment. And are there questions from the board on this item? All right, then.
Madam Chair, one clarification.
Sure.
One of the documents that was support documents about the costs, the quotes that were received, there was some language in there referring to a lease. I just want to be clear that this is a quote for purchase and ownership of the, I believe it was the ice maker.
I don't have the answer to that. Do you have it, Tiffany? Come in. Come in.
Okay, I believe you said that the question was in regards to some language that was in the quote for the ice maker?
It is on food service restaurant supply, the bid that won on the ice maker. And down near the quote, they have information on lease to own, but I assume we're buying this outright. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, we
Just
are.
one-
We're actually buying it, and Mr. Hoke, who I don't see here this evening, he's the athletic director over there, he did communicate with them that this needs to be purchased and not leased.
Understood.
But that's standard language that they would put on the quote.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? All right, then, seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. So I have a motion from Donna Pate to accept. And number 2 is, do I have a second?
I'll
That's
second.
Max, thank you. Now we can vote. Mr. Bryant? thank you. That's Amy Churchill,
Yay.
Max Queen,
Affirmative.
Donna Pate,
Yay.
Peggy Buchanan. Hi, Peggy. Thank you. Cindy McMahon. Okay. Okay, and Ann Franklin, aye. So that passes. I'm glad we don't have a bunch of these. School nutrition bid extension request, and that was moved to an action agenda, and Ms. Payne is here. Do we have questions for Ms. Payne on this item?
I have one, Madam Chair, and I'm glad she's here and she can answer to Dr. Baldwin. I just want to make sure as I read through this, because I don't recall ever having seen this before. You're okay with this? This is a good thing?
It is a good thing.
Okay.
And Dr. Baldwin, Madam Chair, members of the board, Pat, thank you for asking. And this is the first time that this has ever happened in my career in the history of our contracts. But what I like about it is that it gives us an opportunity to use our inventory that we have on hand to keep everything in place and minimize the changes that are happening each day in the program. So on March 13th, we had 44 feeding sites. On March 16th, we had 15, and I've got a lot of chemicals out there and a lot of ice cream that I want to be able to just use next year.
I just wanted to make sure, because I've not seen this before, and I read through it, and I wanted to hear from one of you that this was good, and we weren't about to vote on something that was going to be.
I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I
Okay,
hope
good.
you do.
That's all I needed to hear. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Chemicals and ice cream in the same place.
No, ma'am, we are not.
Thank
We
you.
are very good about that. So, but we hope that we are going to be able to serve it in the fall. We look forward to it, for sure.
All right, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
That's Mr. Queen. Could I get a second?
Donna Pate, second.
All right, and now I need to vote. Mr. Bryant, thank you. That's a yay. Churchill?
Yes.
Yay. Max?
Yay.
Donna Pate?
Yay.
Peggy Buchanan?
Yes.
Thank you. Cindy McMahon?
Aye.
And Ann Franklin. The motion passes, but I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for what you've done.
Yes.
It is amazing that we have been able to feed children and families immediately and efficiently with, thank you.
Thank you for the support that I feel like I've received from this Board of Education, from the staff, all of the Buncombe County School staff. I told Mr. Queen as I walked in the door, he said, thank you for what I'm doing. I said, this is the highlight of my career. I feel self-actualization, actually, that it's like, wow, how we've done what we've done, but I couldn't have done it alone. So I thank you all for being a part of it.
I noticed on some picture, the student had written, thank you for giving me food. And that's exactly what you've done.
And it's kind of cute, if I may. One of the children, when we serve our milk cartons, started crying and said, oh my goodness, I'm back at school. So the little things we're doing. So we've got a tagline that I'm playing with the staff with, going, Comfort Cafes, we feed local children daily. So we may be naming our cafeterias Comfort Cafes, but we certainly are proud to be doing what we're doing.
Well, yes, and we appreciate all of that. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
One other thing. Under normal circumstances, this auditorium would be filled, the bleachers would be pulled out, and there'd be a lot of people here. And based upon the work that Lisa has provided to us, I am certain there will be a standing ovation. So I would ask the board to join me.
I think we like you, Lisa. What do you think? The next item on the agenda is the contract extension for one-to-one student device refreshment system-wide. And this is Mr. Pace. Does any board member have a question for Mr. Pace?
I have one quick question. The amount, the thing I don't see in here, where is this part of what I was looking at in Article 4042 Okay, I thought it was, but I just wanted clarification on that. That's where this dollar amount is coming from out of, perfect, thank you.
Madam Chair, I did not hear the answer to that question. Was that a yes?
Yes. Yes, it was. Okay,
Thank you.
I'm looking at you. All right, any other questions for Mr. Pace? Then I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Pate. And could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Queen. And so now we go through yes, thank you. Mr. Bryant is a yay. Churchill?
Yay.
Queen?
Yay.
Pate? Buchanan? McMahon? Oh, she's got a thumbs up. And Ann Franklin, yes, so it passes. Now then, we're on the consent agenda, and we moved to, those two items that you requested being moved have been addressed, is that correct? Very good. On the consent agenda are the minutes for the April 2nd regular meeting open session, the personnel report, and the policies for second reading. Those policies are 5070 and 7350, public records. Policy 6420, contacts with the board. Policy 6430, state purchasing requirements for equipment. And Policy 9120, bidding for construction work. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve it, but just noting that it's actually contracts with the board is 6420. There's an R that should be in there, so just make sure we know what we're actually voting on. But I move that we pass it.
Thank you. We'll make that correction. And could I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. That was Churchill. Now we're voting again. Mr. Bryant votes yay. Churchill?
Yay.
Yay. Queen?
Yay.
Pate? Buchanan?
Yes.
McMahon?
Aye.
And Franklin, yes. The items on the information agendas, the finance report, budget process, resource material, and supplement information, notification of informal construction and repair contracts and change orders, notification of intent, security assessment, implementation with the business protection specialist for Buncombe County Schools, policies for first reading, policy 4700, and policy 5071, 7351. With that, our next regular meeting is June the 4th, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Pate. Could I get a second? Mr. Bryant. All those in favor, do I have to call their names? All right. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you all. What a lovely day.